listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, people who play it. Today is February 26th, 2024, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing this fine Monday?
Spencer, hello. Yes, happy Monday to you as well. I am here. It was our last February record, so we're moving straight through this winter, man. Thank goodness. Because it's been also like a pretty quiet winter
I've had 4 times where I needed to shovel. This is a very easy winter when it comes to that kind of thing. Now, mind you, that's where I've needed to shovel. I have definitely paid someone to shovel 3 or 4 times as well, so it's not, but yes.
Yeah, I mean it's been very mild here, but still, I don't like the winter time, and it also has been a pretty slow period for like retail stuff. We got 10.25 obviously in January, but there wasn't a lot of meat on the bone there. It's not like there was anything major to do. I stopped doing the excavation stuff, whatever it's called. Like I didn't even do it the last couple weeks, just for the weekly even. It's cosmetics. It's cool if it's your thing, then go get it. But it's just not really in my lane.
Yeah.
And so it'll be March in just a couple more days. We know we're getting a 10.26, which might be sufficiently wacky in March. And even if it's really not, if it's kind of the same thing where it's like, oh, this is neat, but I'm not really going to engage with it that much, at least that chapter kind of closes, and then maybe we're looking at, we're going to start getting a real look at Season 4 pretty soon. We'll get, War Within Alpha maybe starting to coalesce. So, just getting over that hump with it here while we wait for that stuff to get out the door, and we're getting closer day by day.
Yeah, we'll have a few weeks of short episodes just because of the lack of actual things happening around the game. However, this week we will mention a little bit later on and give you the details about the hardcore self-found mode that is coming out later this week. So some people will be diving in on that I know. Not really my thing, but I'll certainly cover the deets just to be sure everyone knows all the launch times and what's going on with that. But yeah, outside of that, I mean, there hasn't been like a ton of WoW in my life this past week. It's funny. Someone reached out on Twitter and sort of poked me and was like, "Hey, man, it sounds like you're having a hard time and a rough time with Season of Discovery. Maybe you should like back off a little bit on how much you're playing that if you're not having a good time." And I was like, "Actually, I've had the last 3 days off. That's exactly what I'm doing this week." It is important, and I do feel that it is important to recognize when you're like, okay, my goal is I want to be able to raid at max level, but the hours it takes to get to max level, or the hours it takes to achieve the thing that I want to achieve, I'm not enjoying doing. And then you sort of have to do that weight of like, which one is worth it? And so like I pushed through and hit max level in Season of Discovery, so I could do the things I wanted to do. But then I basically just took like a week and a half off of like, I just haven't really touched it since last week. As far as what's been going on with Season of Discovery. And so there's still like a glyph that a rune that I want to get when it comes to the Nourish one I still need to get, which involves like getting a seed and then traveling to 4 different zones without using any kind of fast travel stuff to be able to, like, no Hearthstones or things like that, no portals, to be able to talk to these 3 lost treants, because apparently using a Hearthstone is magical and will disrupt the seed and it's very fragile. And so you have to do that. That's just like literally a time sink. So I'll probably one of those things that I do in the background while I'm doing something else, because it's just going to involve a lot of, running around and riding around on a mount. But yeah, so I feel like that's on the agenda at some point, but it's not something that I'm dying for. And I just want to emphasize to folks that, yeah, if this is a period of time in World of Warcraft for you where you're like, I'm not really enjoying doing a lot of things, just find something. There's so many things to do and play at the moment. Just find something else that grabs you. And I mean, we're going to be here reporting on what's going on. We'll let you know if there's something going on that piques your interest and you want to hop back in for this week, and if something's going on this week. So, bear that in mind and take care of yourselves out there, everybody.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I think pretty much a lot of people you would talk to would probably agree that, like, oh, Dragonflight's been really good and the content's good, and Season of Discovery is really fun and interesting and different. But, also a lot of people that I talk to even are feeling like that sort of, well, I'm just kind of raid logging, or, there's really not much I want to do. Season 3 has been sort of in this weird spot where, like, I'm gonna go ahead and say that Season 3 content has been a bit easier than recent previous seasons, raid content and keystones.
We saw this. We saw that a lot in Mythic Plus, right? Just looking at the Mythic Plus numbers for who's been completing stuff, we've seen a substantial jump. And a part of that is the dungeon pool, and part of that is, as you said, sort of balancing and tuning and making things a bit easier for folks, which is great. I definitely think that's the right direction. But it does mean people achieve their goals faster.
Yeah, I think there's that downside of like, well, okay, I'm kind of done, I mean, in my case, I think this is the highest Mythic Plus rating I've had in an 8 dungeon pool since they put the system in.
Right.
And I played it a lot. I mean, I've done way more keys this season than in pretty much any other season. But now, like, I just don't really want to. There's not much left, and part of it is like when you have most of that stuff checked off, like the chance that something exciting is really going to happen is so low. This is that one piece that you need, and it's you're hoping to get something out of a vault rip, and it's like I don't even care anymore because what am I going to do with it? I'm not going to push more rating. I'm not going to do any more mythic prog. So what is the gear going to get me? Look at our case last week, another one night raid week. No mythics, just normal Farrak and then heroic clear. That's fine. I have no problem with that. If my crew is not interested in putting the time into other stuff, then I'm not going to push it, and I'm not going to go try to recruit a bunch of people across ZTH or across a wider scope just to fill a group to do stuff that the people that I really like playing with and like my crew, they're not interested in it. It's counterproductive. So the cool thing was we did get the important axe last week. I didn't get mine, but my DK buddy, who I've been playing with since Mists of Pandaria, who's been pretty dedicated to showing up to this raid, finally got his drop, and he got his axe made. So that's awesome. It was, again, one raid night means only a couple keys for me. So I only did like 2 keys. But the cool thing about that was a very good buddy of mine, probably who I would say is my best friend inside of WoW, like person I've met through WoW that I play WoW with, who, again, I've been playing with him since, like, Mists. He really wasn't in Season 3, especially early on, He played a little bit, but then he kind of disappeared. He's had a lot of stuff going on. He's been sniffing around a bit, and, he's kind of getting back in, doing some PvP. So I got to bring him to, I think one of the keys we did last week, I brought him in. And he needs raiding, he needs teleports and all that, so it's awesome to be able to, like, just pop him in there and, get him going, get him some cool rewards. Like, that's more fun to me at this point than anything to do for my own toon or account. And also, my longest running WoW friend, I think, is looking to get back in. He's been out since like early Aberrus. Him and his wife. I've played with both of them on and off since Wrath. Like, we're talking, I've known these people for 15 years. And we played together pretty consistently, but they've been super busy, but they're trying to get back in. So like that gives me kind of a nice late season boost, because I mean, these are people I like playing with. It's a reason. It's the people are the reason why I always come back. So, if they're going to be in there and they need stuff, then I'm happy to help. And that's actually pretty exciting. That's more exciting than anything the content could provide me right now, I guess. So, other than that, I'm just not really playing that much. I hop in when it's time to play, and we knock stuff out, and then see you next week.
Yeah, I was talking about that yesterday, actually, with Josh. I was just basically saying, like, one of the biggest things for me with World of Warcraft is playing with people who I enjoy playing with. And if there isn't someone around or online or doing something that I can hop in with and do stuff with, my motivation is either I want to get to the point where I'm able to do something with those people, or I'm just not really motivated to do things. And so the get to the point comes down to like, hey, a new season's out or a new expansion just came out. I need to level up quickly so that I can get to the point where I'm able to play with my buddies who are also playing this game, right? That to me is a big motivator. Outside of that, like, unless I have like hey, I really want this mount, or I really want this pet, or I really want this like particular goal that I've set my sights on, me logging into World of Warcraft is like, I'll do my daily routine, but that's not really all that keen with something like Dragonflight. There isn't something that I'm searching for or striving for, right? There isn't that Azeroth, that Azerite power kind of objective and goal that I enjoy doing that grind with. So yeah, the motivation or like feel of draw to just log in and be inside of the game on a regular basis is just not as high as it is in previous expansions with Dragonflight. So we'll see what ends up happening with War Within, and we'll see what ends up happening with Season 4 and how that all plays out for folks. But yeah, right now is just a lull. And so if there aren't a lot of people around and they want to be playing something else, I know There's a few games that are out right now that people are just diving into on a massive level. Last Epoch being the big one for my group of friends. Means that I'm just not seeing them as much around the game. That just means that, that's fine. I spend my time with something else or do something else, and it's a good little recovery period, those ebbs and flows of people's game time. All right, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week is the Arena Skirmish bonus event, which means the Sign of the Skirmisher buff is up, increasing honor gains from skirmish wins by 50%. And there's also a quest to win 10 of these, which rewards 110 conquests and 2,000 honor. You can knock that out pretty easily with the Arena Skirmishes, if that's something you're trying to do. We also want to be sure that you're picking up your Aiding the Accord quest and doing either Super Bloom or whatever the other alternative tends to be for this week. You can hop in and get those rewards done for the week, get yourself a nice boost or catch up if you're trying to catch up. A lot of reputation catch up involved with this expansion if you haven't been logging in regularly. If you're trying to see all of the story, there's a lot of stuff locked behind Renown, which then requires reputation. So doing things like Aiding the Accord is certainly a good way to help get caught up on those sorts of things. PvP Brawl for the week is Gravity Lapse. This is, of course, Eye of the Storm with modified gravity. So you go in, every 1 minute, gravity turns off. Everyone is essentially able to swim around in the air, and it turns back on, and then you plummet back down to the ground. There are some pretty neat things you can do with this. You can do things like if you're riding a mount, when the gravity turns off and you jump, it launches you forward at the speed you were moving forward on a mount, which means you can kind of traverse areas you normally wouldn't be able to traverse. That's kind of a neat feature with this sort of thing. However, there's of course the risky thing of if it turns back on and you just happen to be like out in the middle of nowhere, you will plummet to your death. So just keep that in mind, because it is just a big floating rock as far as what you're doing in Eye of the Storm. So yeah, this is one of the OG brawls. It's not super spicy and interesting when it comes to what we've seen with other brawls that have come out. It's certainly one that could be revisited and tweaked up a bit, but it is one that's, pretty simple and pretty fun to sort of knock out and get yourself some Marks of Honor, Conquest, and Honor from the Something Different quest when you get your win.
Yeah, if you're like a Battleground veteran, then there's not a lot of nuance to this, right? Like, it mixes it up a little bit, but it's not like you gotta learn a whole new mode here for the week. I feel like brawls fall into a couple different categories, which are like awesome brawls that are perfect sometimes treats, like Comp Stomp or the Nomi one. And then there's ones that are just straight up like, this is the way that this Battleground should be. And I think Gravity Lapse and Deepwind Dunk would be my two in that category, where it's like, just make the regular Battlegrounds do this and take it out of the brawl rotation, Yeah. Gravity Lapse is similar to what we talked about last week with Arathi Basin, Arathi Blizzard, right? Like, it's not different enough. It mixes it up a little bit. I mean, it's more dramatic than Arathi Blizzard, obviously, right? Like, it's not just like, oh, I can't see as far. You're getting tossed up in the air every minute, but I don't know. This isn't the kind of draw where it's like, I have to get in there and queue this one up this week because it's just so much fun, you know? But I do think, like, some of these Battlegrounds are pretty old and a little moldy, man. They could use a little bit of a shake-up, I think. I mean, I'm somebody who doesn't PvP a lot, so keep that in mind, But maybe with that fresh coat of paint, maybe Battlegrounds would be more appealing to a player like me, where it's like, okay, well, let me check this out. Let me see how the new rules and tuning feel and stuff like that, And I'm just not in that category, so I just kind of ignore this stuff.
It's tricky, right? Because if you do update content like this, it is going to draw some players back in who may not have been paying attention to it for very long. But you are just still going to have players who are like, PvP is not my thing. I'm not interested in this. So weighing the value of the effort of changing something like that or updating something like that is something that devs have to do with their time. And it's kind of tricky, but I can definitely see the appeal on both sides of that one. All right, Orstar the Hibernator is the big old bear that you can knock out in Emerald Dream to get yourself some 441 loot. If you're looking to pick up some more loot, or maybe a bear form transmog shape for you for your druids out there, be sure you're knocking out Orstar. And then Mythic Plus affixes for the week are Tyrannical, Incorporeal, and Spiteful. meaning bosses have more health and deal increased damage, while in combat, incorporeal beings periodically appear and attempt to weaken players, and spiteful fiends rise from the corpses of non-boss enemies and pursue random players. God, this has got to be one of the ugliest tyrannical weeks you could possibly see. Oh my god. So bosses are going to be harder and take longer to kill and hit harder. Like, that's just, like, bosses are a wall. And then when you are doing trash and you're killing trash, as long as you're in combat, you have incorporeal ads that spawn and you have to actually deal with them regularly. And you're in combat longer because when you kill normal trash, spiteful ads spawn, which then target your group and chase players down. And if they reach them and hit them, then they can kill them in 1 or 2 swipes. So this is like bad trash mixed with bad bosses, man. I don't even know what this is this week.
Where do I begin?
Oh my God.
The saving grace here is that incorporeal and spiteful don't do anything during a boss fight.
Fair. I mean, fair, right? Sure.
So
it takes longer to get to the boss, and the boss
Yeah.
takes longer, but at least the bosses aren't getting another affix.
Yeah, like that's all I got. This week stinks, and I'll be glad to only be doing a key or two this week, because it's exactly what you said. Like, trash is going to be a slog, even though it's a tyrannical week. The spitefuls, yeah, their health decays over time, and you can reposition around them, and you absolutely should do all those things. Like pull a pack back to the door, and then everybody walks into the room, and then you burn the pack down, and then you typhoon it back towards the door, or you root it, or whatever, you stun it, and everybody runs away, and then its health decays, but they don't decay that fast. Plus, incorporeal is the obnoxious ads that essentially they need hard CC, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can interrupt them, and you can soft CC them, but they're up for like 15 seconds, so you got to pay a fair amount of attention to them if you can't hard CC them. And note that the incorporeal affix says while in combat. Well, guess what you are in combat with? The spiteful ghost. So, like, spiteful extends combat, which also extends the danger from the incorporeal ads. It's essentially like it's a Fort and Tyrannical week put together.
It is. That's what it feels like.
Trash is going to be. You know what I mean? Like, there's not as much around maybe positioning or like stress on certain members of the party with these affixes as much. But then again, like, incorporeal is also super comp dependent, right? Like, the difference between a group that's set up to easily deal with incorporeal and a group that isn't is massive.
Yeah. Like,
if you have like a Ret Pally or something who's like cleansing these things, or, I mean, this is the week where I hit up my Resto Shaman buddy, or like a Warlock, right? A Warlock is a great thing to have because a Warlock can actually do both of them, but you got to wait until you got to make sure that they're not going to complain about having to do it. That's the tricky part with my beloved Warlock friends. Yeah. It's like, I could do them both, but I don't want to because of my numbers.
Yeah, my numbers are going to be garbage through this whole thing. I
don't really want to die, so if you could maybe fear that thing, like that, I mean...
Yeah.
The incorporeal debuff is not going to result in an instantaneous death, but it's really bad.
Yeah.
So, you don't want them going off.
It's a larger DPS loss to have one go off than it is to just CC it. Period.
Massively, especially for the whole group. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, like they just got to be handled, and I mean, there's a variety of ways to handle them, but you got to be able to do it, and you got to pay attention to it. Make sure, before you drop that keystone, talk to your team and just say, hey, does everybody have their hard CCs on for this? Because that was the last time we had incorporeal up. I went in with my crew and we got going, and a bunch of people were like, "Oh, I got the wrong talents on." And that first dungeon was not, it was a little hectic. And then we reset up for the second one, and then it was fine. It was like, oh yeah, right. But this is another case where, man, if you're like a warrior or a DK and you're trying to pug, good luck this week because you don't really bring much to the table. Like, yeah, a warrior can pop incorporeal with a talent, but it's extremely inconvenient to use. It's super long cooldown, and it's just not a reliable method. Like, it can't be your plan for dealing with incorporeal, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Incorporeal, I don't like as an affix. I don't love the way that it sits, and I really don't like this combo. Like, this combo has really bad. I don't know. I want to call it anti-synergy, but it's not. Like, they synergize very well together against you, the player, right? Like, they make you, the player, miserable with their awesome synergy.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. This is not a great week. I mean, overall, I think the dungeon pool is still really good and the tuning is generous. So, like, if you need to do something for Keystone Master or whatever, if you could still do it this week, like, you could get a teleport this week. It's not impossible to do it. It's just the moment to moment is not going to be very fun this week, in my opinion. And that's the biggest problem, is that I look at this and I go, I don't want to play this. This isn't the combo that I want to have.
Yeah, that's definitely the challenge. Is like, technically, yes, it's an easy Tyrannical week because the bosses are not dealing with multiple affixes that are overlapping and making Tyrannical really difficult. But it's just how long it's going to take you to get through Trash, right? So Trash is going to die quickly, but then it's going to res up as, spirits, and you're going to have to DPS the spirits down. And if people aren't using their hard CCs, it's going to make Trash even longer and sloggier and harder and potentially more wipes. So it's just that the risk of this feeling like a total bane on your existence is there, right? And so it's not like, oh, it's Spiteful Volcanic, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that doesn't sound so bad, right? Like, you have Spiteful Ads, you can CC them, you just got to avoid the little, bursting volcanoes, and you're good to go. And on the boss, you got to avoid the bursting volcanoes, but you're good to go. Like, that is a substantially better week than Incorporeal Spiteful. So, anyways, it's something that people have to report back to us a bit on and see what they were able to do key-wise, but I wouldn't say it's like an anti-push week. It's just a less fun week when you look at what this looks like on paper. So we'll see what happens with it.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is we're just deep in the season now, and it's like you kind of got to go looking for reasons to do a bunch of keys. Like I mentioned with playing my buddy who's been out for most of the season, right? Like, that's a good reason to do it. But this week's not going to be that much fun, and now we're back through like the top of the season's rotation, which means, after this week coming up, then we got an Afflicted week coming, and Afflicted is a whole other comp-dependent thing, So we got a couple weeks here till we start getting into those nice, juicy combos.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Darkmoon Faire is going to be running from this Sunday, March 3rd, until Saturday, March 28th. Sorry, not 28th. Oh my God, that'd be the whole month. Saturday, March 9th. I don't know why I said 28th. I think in my brain I was like, oh yeah, there's only 28 days that we're having in.
That wasn't even my fault.
I don't know.
Sometimes
weird.
Sometimes I set you up for failure. I will admit that publicly to the airwaves right now.
Well, and I'll also say that February is a leap year this year, so it's the 29th, 29 days in Feb this year. So it doesn't even work with 28. Like, my brain just completely busted in that one moment. Anyways, Sunday, March 3rd until Saturday, March 9th. You can enjoy yourself some Darkmoon Faire. Get on down there and be sure you're getting your buff for the additional experience and reputation gain. You're getting your extra skill ups points for your different professions. You are doing all of your achievements that you can want to do. It'll be the start of March, so it's a good way to get some more Traveler's Log sort of currency that's down in there. And if you're trying to get your dirigible, you can get some more tokens to buy your dirigible. There's lots of things you can do. I'm still waiting for the dirigible with dynamic flight. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to sort of zip around in a Zeppelin. That just sounds awesome to me. So I'm looking forward to that. Be sure you're starting to work towards that. And overall, have a good time with your Darkmoon Fairs that's coming up.
Yeah, that's a good point about the Traveler's Log. As we record this, we haven't seen the preview for March yet. They usually put it out like the last 2 days of the month, right? So we don't know what's coming yet or whatever, and we'll talk about it next week, but it will already be in the game by then. Yeah. Many of you will already be done with it by the time we talk about it on the show. But yeah, so that is a good point. Like, this is nice timing with that because, the rollover hits for March 1st on Friday, and then the weekend, Darkmoon Faire starts up. Yeah, there's usually a lot of points you can get from doing DMF stuff there. Mm-hmm. So that's a nice way to start getting your tender knocked out for the month and get whatever the bonus reward is. So that's awesome. And I think the number one thing I always like to point out about Darkmoon Faire is the professions. You get the extra profession knowledge, which can be really nice if you're still working on those. I mean, I finished up the ones I care about a long time ago, but people have been people are fluid with WoW, understandably, and I feel like people have been real fluid with Dragonflight lately. So don't forget, I mean, it's an extra nice, 3 points or whatever, knowledge points for your professions of choice for doing really very little. They don't ask you to do a lot to get those. So, if you're still working on something, don't forget to go grab them.
Exactly. All right, hot fixes for the week. Outlaw Rogues, they fixed an issue with Echoing Reprimand that allowed Slice and Dice to trigger effects like Ruthlessness and Restless Blades as if you were spending 7 combo points. Yeah, that's a lot of combo points. So they fixed that issue, so I expect your numbers to change a little bit based off what you were doing. I like this hotfix note because it really emphasizes how great the naming of abilities for rogues are. Because you have Echoing Reprimand, Slice and Dice, Ruthlessness, and Restless Blades all mentioned inside the same hotfix note. And they're all cool sounding abilities, man. Like they all sound awesome. I just want to put that out there.
Restless Blades is like the cooldown reduction thing, I think, like based on how much energy you spend or whatever. Well, it's such a great name for an ability. I love it. I am pretty jealous. That's what my rogue buddy plays like pretty much exclusively is Outlaw, and one of our other rogues in guild has been mostly playing Outlaw lately. So I'm kind of envious of them. I think if I was gonna do anything that wasn't like tanking and I was gonna play something else, it would be rogue. But yeah, I don't know. I don't like. There are ways to get 7 combo points, right? If you have various talents and active abilities or whatever. But yeah, I don't.
But when spending 1 combo point to get 7 combo points worth of damage becomes the best way to play, there's a problem.
That that sounds like I doubt that was intentional, and if it was, that was an oopsie. But it won't be functioning that way anymore.
Yeah. As far as Waycrest Manor goes, they fixed an issue where receiving Aura of the Dead could interrupt a player's channeling. That's a problem too. If just getting the aura interrupts you. Would be very irritating.
Something has been like severely wrong with Aura of Dread for some reason in this patch. So we had, there's some hot fixes last week where it wasn't falling off.
Yep. And
now it's like interrupting you when it applied. Well, not anymore, but it was.
It was.
So yeah, nice that they're cleaning that up. Waycrest Manor is a weird case because.
I'm wondering if it's the dungeon that has not the raid, the dungeon that has received the most hot fixes of any dungeon. I'm wondering if it is because it was the one that had like stuff that went through floors. It had
the
bosses that were broken.
Not really there.
The trash has been like redone multiple times. Bosses have been redone. I really am curious if it is the dungeon that has received the most hot fixes of all time.
Maybe, yeah. It's weird. Like Waycrest Manor is so messy, but I've never hated it. Right?
No, it's a great dungeon. I love that dungeon.
I can't be like, nah, I mean, it had those bugs even 2 weeks ago where the pig mobs were just like wrecking people.
Yes.
I could never stay mad at Waycrest Manor.
Hitting stuff as they leap. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just the atmosphere is way too good. It's just so cool looking, and it's really like a very flexible kind of path you could take through there, especially now that the doors are always just all open.
Yep.
There are other dungeons that have been buggy and I've felt way less good about,
Yep.
What was the dungeon that was like the prison in BFA?
Oh,
I can't remember the name of it. Tol Dagor.
Tol Dagor. That's it. Tol Dagor. That's it.
That was another one that had like the fake walls and like stuff would pull in spots, and I was not okay with that. Yeah. Tol Dagor never got a pass from me.
I agree. It was not a great dungeon. I'm with you. Yep.
It's like, Waycrest, you're misbehaving again. You scamp. You know what I mean? Like, Tol Dagor, no, I don't want that ever. But Waycrest Manor, just let it do its thing. It's just such a cool dungeon. But and I think it's one of the better. I think it's one of the better dungeons currently in this pool, even with the problems it's had, because the timer is very generous. So I still think it's a fun run, even with the bugs it's had and stuff. But it's a funny perception thing where, I mean, you're right. It has received a ton of fixes, and it is just even still, it's just like a straight up buggy dungeon.
Yeah.
But I can never be mad at it. I don't know.
No, the flavor of it all to me is just wonderful, and I think that's really what comes down to is like Tol Dagor is a jail, and it looks like a jail, and jails look the same all the way through them, and so it just is the same thing all the way through, and then ends with a last boss that has to be like a boss with the most amount of wipes you could possibly have on it inside a dungeon. Because, oh my goodness, the amount of times that we wiped on that boss back in BFA, dude, it's just ridiculous. With or 1 or 2 people left alive who managed to finish the boss off while everyone else is dead. Just because it's really unforgiving and it's hard to let you get zoned really easily. You can pull stuff through the floors and you end up with a bunch of trash running on top of you. Like there's there were so many things about it that were messy. So yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't know what it is about Waycrest, but I really enjoy a spooky mansion, haunted house kind of vibe thing that they had going on with that place, and I'd love to see something similar in the future. Like, we've now redone some of the Wergen town and Wergen stuff. Let's get another creepy mansion going somewhere along the lines. Why not? Let's do it. All right. Hot fixes for Season of Discovery. A bunch of these went in. They increased the number of crafted materials found in boxes of Gnomeregan salvage and slightly increased the drop rate of the grime-encrusted salvage throughout Gnomeregan. So folks who were struggling with those should be, or at least those who are raiding, should be getting a lot more materials, which is a nice thing to do. The Elite and Dangerous quests now grant additional bonus experience. Now, these are specifically for dungeons. The Elite and Dungeon quests now grant additional experience. So if you're completing these at max level, it means you're also getting more gold for completing these, because the conversion is always experience to gold. So if you're someone who's doing all your Elite quests or saved up all your Elite quests, that's a great thing to do. I have a whole bunch of them saved up that I'm probably going to knock out slowly over Phase 2 and then just turn them all in at the start of Phase 3 is probably what I'm going to end up doing, because there's a lot of Elite quests around level 40 that you can do, so that's certainly on the list of things. The Dismantle enchant now procs more often for casters in melee. The vendor of the easy throw radiation bombs and the high yield radiation bombs has been reduced. The price of those has been reduced. And players in the Spirit World can now resurrect at the Chain Spirits for up to 30 minutes after the Blood Moon event ends. That's great. So basically what used to happen is the event would end and the Chain Spirits would just go away right away. And it meant that people would end up having to run to one of the Spirit Healers, which just took a really long time if you died right at the end of the Blood Moon event. And so at least this way now, those guys hang around a while longer. People have a little bit more time to sort of limp their way back, their walk of shame back to their back to their corpse, or at least to the Chain Spirits. So that helps a lot too. Also, keeping in mind, the Chain Spirits can res you without having a resurrection timer, whereas walking into your body creates a resurrection timer. So this is the other big factor of, hey, if you died 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 times during the Blood Moon event, you might have a huge timer on your resurrect button and just be forced to take the spirit res, which on a Chain Spirit does not give you the debuff that you would normally suffer from for taking a spirit res. So that's a nice thing. All right, Spirit of Redemption form will now no longer instantly cancel if you attempt to cast spells not allowed in that form. Doing so now returns an error message, which is interesting. I'm curious as to how many people were going into Spirit of Redemption form and then just casting anything they wanted while they were there. I'm going to cast Resurrection. Let's cast Resurrection right now.
Returning an error seems to be the correct thing to do, right? Like, it shouldn't. The instant cancellation. Like, what if you just hit the wrong hotkey by mistake?
Yeah.
So that's I mean, seeing a bunch of quality of life improvements here for sure.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a funny one. I mean, I can't imagine that was intentional behavior, right? Because it just doesn't make any sense. Normally, if you're trying to do something that the combat rules don't allow you to do, the game tells you that you can't do that, and so it wasn't doing that. So that seems to just be a bug, not like a design shift.
Yes, exactly. And to clarify, it was that people weren't receiving an error message, which means that they thought they could cast stuff that they couldn't. It's not that they were able to cast things that they were not supposed to be able to, because that would be hilarious if that was the actual bug. Because yes, you would be able to do things like, I'm just going to cast Resurrection on this person, or I'm going to cast a bunch of spells you're not supposed to be able to cast. So yes, it's just getting the error message returned is the fix that went in. All right, a Zandalari emissary can now be found atop the Zeppelin Tower in Durotar. So if this is the emissaries that allow you to opt out of the Blood Moon event. So if you're someone who wants to do that, you can now do that on the Zeppelin. So you're not, as I said, riding the Zeppelin into a PvP area where everyone on board the Zeppelin can beat you up. Because it's not faction-based, remember. This is group-based PvP, which means you could be the 6th person on a Zeppelin as a group of 5 are riding it in to, beat people up. And suddenly you're like, oh, guys, oops, as they surround you and beat you up the moment that you enter the zone. So yes, be glad that is now also resolved. We did get some class hotfixes as well. Won't go through all of them, just to allow people to sort of go and check the show notes and check the actual hotfix notes to see what actually changed for their class. There are some neat ones. They made it so that in Druid's Berserk now also increases the number of targets struck by Lacerate while it's active, so giving Druids a little bit more AoE, which is pretty big. And they also made Swipe generate substantially more threat, so making it a bit easier for Druid tanks to sort of hold aggro on things, which I think is great to see. So that was a big change. Another big change that a lot of people were talking about is Raptor Strike damage when Melee Specialist Rune is active is now normalized weapon damage. This is actually a substantial drop to the Melee Hunter build that was out there. However, this is like Hunters were doing 30% more damage than everyone else. Now they're doing 12% more damage than everyone else. This isn't like, oh my god, they're dead. It's like, no, you're still probably the best DPS spec, but now you're just not doing a ridiculous amount more damage than everyone else. So just bear with that particular factor. Spell power now benefits the critical strike damage of Spellfrost Bolt for mages. So yes, it's also important that when you're critting, you're actually critting for the amount you're supposed to be critting for, which is another reason why things like Hunters are jumped up so high. So keep that in mind. And then last, I want to mention something down here for rogues. Shoryuken Toss's range has been reduced to 10 yards from 15. This is going to reduce the chance of it bouncing a little too far and pulling extra packs in dungeons. This isn't like a nerf to, oh no, I can't throw my thing as far. It's like, no, this is good. It now matches the range of spells like Chain Lightning and Avenger Shield, so that you're actually able to throw your Shoryuken Toss as a rogue tank, have it bounce on targets, and then not bounce to like a pack 15 yards away from it and pull that other pack too. Yeah.
15 yards is scary.
I
don't want that. I don't want that in any version of the game, anywhere, from any ability. We don't need stuff to jump 15 yards to stuff that's not already in combat. Like, so that's nice.
Yeah,
I'm glad they fixed that. There are some more. I didn't put them in here, but there are more tuning changes incoming to Season Discovery this coming week's maintenance. They are doing a lot of retuning this phase, I feel like, which maybe is sort of unavoidable, right? Because you have an extra 15 levels, you have all these more spells and stuff. Just inherently, characters in vanilla are a lot more powerful at 40 than at 25, obviously. And so then you have the interaction with all these runes, which is, new, and you have all these new gameplay styles and stuff. So it's not really a surprise, but they have been retuning Season Discovery quite a bit in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, there's neat things coming in, like they're reducing the cost of Life Bloom by 50%, but clarifying that this is 50% for this. It's basically a refund is how they're sort of doing it. So like if you cast Life Bloom on a target, when it blooms, you get 50% of the mana back that you'd spent casting it, and that stacks with each of the additional ones that you cast on it. So essentially, it makes it like a 50% mana reduction when it all sort of blooms and comes back to you, which I think is great, because I did feel like this was substantially more expensive than it really should have been, especially for a runed item, a runed thing. They also made Nourish, which is one of the new runed abilities for Resto Druid's mana cost reduction by 27%, which is another huge reduction, which I think is also great to see. And they made it so that a lot of spells are castable inside of shapeshift forms, which was a big problem for like Moonkins, like casting Remove Curse, Remove Poison, Abolish Poison, Innervate, Rebirth, Revive, Mark of the Wild, Gift of the Wild. All of those would shapeshift you out of Moonkin form. So they're just fixing that to make it so that you can actually cast them in Moonkin form, which I think is great to see as well. But yeah, lots of tuning fixes coming in. So it's one of those things that they're keeping their thumb on the dial when it comes to making sure they're tweaking stuff the way it needs to be tweaked for all this. But Jason, you mentioned a specific axe at the top of the show, and one of the reasons why people started to see this axe is because there was a big hotfix that went in last week on the 20th that sort of made everyone cheer for joy, I guess. Kaivax came out and did a little hotfix post about the Embers of Firalath Empowered and some changes that came in for those. Says many aspects of Dragonflight have reflected a shift in philosophy towards designs that allow us to enjoy reaching a point where we feel done with a character's power progression. Legendaries returned as an exception to this. Legendaries are intended to be a special reward that some players would obtain over the course of a season, demonstrating a display of excellence in the most challenging content. As Season 3 unfolded, we've increasingly heard feedback from frustrated players who have been clearing Ymir to Soul weekly on Heroic with no Firalath in sight. And we want to give those players a sure path to achieving their goal. So earlier today, with a hotfix that is now live, we significantly increased the effect of all Embers of Firalath for players who receive them. This increase is retroactive and applies to all players, whether or not you've consumed any Embers you may have. So keep in mind, guys, that now you should have a much easier path to getting yourself the Legendary. Now, here's my beef with the philosophy of legendaries are supposed to be a special reward that some players would obtain. If that's the case, allow your team to distribute who gets the legendary, period. That's how that should work. That's how it used to work way back in the day with legendaries, about who's getting their bindings and who's going to get a binding and how that works. Who's going to get the, like all those drops were things that a team would distribute to players so that they could say, hey, this is our DPS. They show up 100% of the time. They're going to get the best reward from it, and we want to reward them for their excellent performance this tier, so they get the first legendary thing that drops and give it to them. That is how that system should work. It feels very weird to me to be like, it's a random drop that anyone can get, and that's the big, you've obtained something this season. That's not how this works, guys. You can't have it both ways. Can't have it both ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think the legendary distribution system has just been a massive failure in recent tiers. And I mean, this is good. This is good news. And I don't know. We may have killed Farak before this hotfix went in. It's hard to say. We raid pretty early by West Coast standards, so I don't know if the hotfix was active. And if you look at the math, WoW had posted an article about it, and there's some data mining and stuff. And I think it's 15 heroic kills should guarantee you the axe or something, which is really high in my opinion. After the hotfix, it still takes that long. Also, Firalath was just bad until the most recent round of hotfixes.
Yeah,
it was a DPS loss for a lot of.
You're supposed to not use the on use on your legendary. Yeah, that's a problem.
Well, yeah, I think it's just this. It's like a clash between these different design philosophies, and it's just not really working. I'm glad they did this. It sort of means that if you don't have yours by now and you've been raided this whole tier, those lessers you got, they really never meant anything, did they? You get the lesser embers off of random bosses, and mildly increases your chance, but now they buff the greaters massively, right? Which I'm sure that's gonna overtake any benefit you got even from the buffed lessers. But hey, it's the axes are good, I guess. The problem is, it's if it was a prestige item, if it was solely cosmetic or something, that'd be one thing. And it's well, did you get it? No, I'm gonna try again next week, whatever. It's not gonna impact your character, especially post buffs. I mean, really, what they did was they fixed the weapon, right? They made the weapon work properly, in my opinion. I mean, maybe that's harsh, but I feel like the state it released in was not acceptable, and the fixes made it actually function.
I always wonder what it's like from a dev's perspective to have the realization that players just literally aren't using the on-use effect that's on a legendary because players have figured out on their own that it's a DPS loss to do that. What is the whoops, what's the feeling that you have when you have that realization of we designed this ultra powerful amazing weapon that is supposed to be very hard to get, and it's supposed to feel really rewarding, and you've completed and you're done, that's what they've sort of described this feeling as, but they undertuned the on use so that it is then not something that's viable for players to use. And you have to recognize that there are a whole bunch of players who got this thing early on who essentially then got it and were oh, I actually noticed my DPS went down when I did this regularly. I would do more damage if I didn't stop to channel this thing or cast this thing. Wait a minute. I don't know. Things like that to me are very surprising on an item that's supposed to be incredibly powerful. I don't know. I know they just changed the dial. They made it so that spell haste affected the cast time on this thing, right? Which basically made it substantially better as far as how it worked. But it's surprising to me that it still was a DPS loss, that to hit that point development wise where you just didn't realize in testing that, oh, actually, and I don't know. I don't know how they do their testing. I don't know how all that system works, but this legendary has been a bit of a snafu through the whole expansion. When it comes, well, through this whole patch, basically this season has just been like, hey, you know what? It's hard to get, and when you do get it, you don't really want to use it other than just as a stick that you beat things with. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, that's a strange situation to line up in for something that's such a prestigious item. But I don't know. My biggest gripe about it is these things should be distributed. They should be something that drop and teams can distribute. It just makes no sense to me to essentially have a random chance drop that could go to a guy who, you know, happened to be filling in for you that week when your regulars are there, or someone's alt because they had to play their alt that week because you were down a healer or whatever it was, right? And happened to get, you know, something going on as far as they got it on their alt as opposed to one of your main guys who's been coming every week. That bothers me about a legendary system, just in general. Either make it easy enough for everyone to get it, or,
right.
you know.
I mean, I really feel like you could do sort of a modernized version of like kind of the way like Shadowmourne worked almost, except make it, first of all, make the starter just way easier to get. Okay. But when the tier comes out, if you're an appropriate class spec for the legendary, you can start the quest, and then you get drops from killing bosses in the raid, and then once you get enough of them, you progress the quest to the next portions or whatever. Like, in the past, those would be just loot on the boss, and you had to decide who was getting the drops, right? I think you could do that with individual loot. I don't know. Like, we live in a world where a lot of players who are heavily invested in raiding, and the people who come back week after week to do the raids, one of the big pulls for them is playing the Warcraft logs game, right? Like, that's really what they're playing.
Yeah, it is.
Like,
for
how,
sure.
how
100%.
How well can I parse?
Yeah.
Well, if you're a strength user and you were late to the Fearlath party, then you haven't been able to parse anywhere. You know,
it reminds me of the bow off of Sylvanas, like just right off the bat.
The Sylvanas bow is another perfect example of a terrible distribution system.
Yeah.
Like, it is not 2005. Okay. People expect, if they invest the time in the game, that they're going to get these pinnacle rewards. Now, if you want to make a legendary item that has no gear impact, and maybe it's a new VFX for your class, or it's just
armor
Mog
for a
or whatever.
Drake or whatever. Like,
okay, fine. Like, if you want to do something like this, it should be cosmetic, in my opinion, because the power needs to be accessible, because this is the state of the player base in 2024. We are not playing against your content. We are playing against each other on Warcraft logs, right? Like, I mean, I feel like that's where a lot of people exist. Like, and Amir Drasil is such a weird case because, honestly, Heroic Raid, in my opinion, is pretty easy. And Heroic Raid is also, even that high up, is a difficulty that a lot of players aren't even doing, right? Yeah. So, now, it's cool to have the bad guy's weapon and use it for your own purposes and all that, right? And yeah, like, that should definitely be like a rating reward and stuff, but like, if it's just hard to get, what's the point of it? So more than half of my raid team has disappeared for the season, you know?
Yeah.
The axes that we got aren't being used to kill bosses, and the people that are still showing up don't have axes. That's why they're still showing up. So, I don't know. Like, I think there's opportunities to have a distribution system like this that don't have these, like, crushing impacts on player power. And I think there's probably different ways to approach introducing cool player power. I mean, you could apply all the stuff I'm saying to Nazaro from last year too, right? Like, I guess the difference there was it was a much narrower range that was interested in it because it was only for evokers, so it wasn't like all strength users were gunning for one or whatever.
Right.
My big hope, and I don't know if they'll do this, but my big hope for Season 4 is that they don't lock an upgrade item for Nazaro and for Firaloth behind a dinar or something similar, where it's like, oh, kill 30 raid bosses and then get this item. You get 3 of these and you can pick 3 things off this vendor.
Right.
Like, don't do that. Like, say that you're sorry to the strength users and the evokers, and day 1, okay, talk to this NPC, get the thing, okay, my legendary is now Season 4 ready. You know? That's what I want for my team. I want my players to come into Season 4 excited and happy and ready to blow stuff up with their cool items.
Yeah.
You know? So, I don't know. I'm pretty sure... What was it? I can't really remember because it's been a couple of years now somehow, but The Sylvanas bow, it was just totally random drop. I don't think there was even streak protection on it.
It was random drop. Yep.
And it was from Season 2. And then there was an upgrade item in Season 4 of Shadowlands that would let you bring it up to item level relevance, but I believe that cost a dinar. So if you were a hunter and you had that weapon, like, you didn't get 3 choices for your dinar. You were using 1 dinar on the weapon no matter what. I think. I could be wrong about that. And I hope they don't... I just hope that there's a cool bonus where it's like, okay, did you get Nazro or Firaloth? Cool. You're ready for Season 4. I think that would... At least that would sort of... That would blunt a lot of the issues, I think, that teams have experienced with these items in this expansion. Because it's like, okay, well, we got like 5 months now or whatever where the players who put the work in can just enjoy these items and be really powerful. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think you've touched on a lot of really good things there, as far as how the legendary system hopefully works going forward for a lot of people who have these items. I'll be curious to see how it all works. Something that I don't know, I blurted out in the middle of that there that I think was actually something I wanted to revisit as a topic. I would love to have seen legendary dragon armor for the dragon you got from clearing Heroic on Mythic. So if you went into Mythic, you cleared Mythic, the reward for Mythic was an amount. It was armor for the Heroic Drake that looked amazing. I think that to me would be a really cool reward. But yes, you were. Yeah,
but I think there's opportunities, right? Yeah. That you don't have to do it this way, I guess, is really what we're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I do want to say, like, I'm glad that they buffed this. Like, I just think, like, there are elements of the whole Firaloth saga that just, they're a little scary to me because it's like old Team 2 business, you know? Took way too long to fix the item to make it actually good. Took way too long to fix the drop rate so that people could actually get their hands on it. I know that, like, there's a lot of different elements to game dev and that, you know, there's different priorities, but this is the kind of thing, these are the kind of, like, inflicted wounds that we saw a few years back that they kind of stopped doing as of around 2021. And I don't know. I'm glad that they fixed it. Hopefully I'll get mine this week or something. I'm not going to use it. I'm really not. Like, I haven't spent a single GCD out of Protspec in Dragonflight. So right. I'm not going to use it. The other thing, too, is that the quest to actually complete the item and get the usable weapon, it sounds like it really sucks. From what I've heard, people tell me, like, like, I don't really want to do it anyway. So, like, that's the other part of this, you know? It's not like, oh, you just get the drop and now you're blowing stuff up. It's like, now you got a project to do and you got some gold you have to spend and whatever. You basically got a bill and a list of chores.
I think it was a large amount of, I think it was like 80,000 gold or something if I was reading correctly.
Depending on what you're sitting on and what the market's like. I mean, you see people say it costs them anywhere from like 40 to 80K, give or take. So, you know, it's, and again, like, if you're going to have that grind for a cool item, that's cool too. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
That it should all be backloaded. You should get the cool item up front, like, easily, right away, and then you spend the time doing this other stuff to then forge the item, and now you benefit from it.
And let's be clear, that is what the Legion weapon was. You got the weapon up front, and you spent the back end time making it cool. Like, that's, you know, I think that is a great example of how I think all of these systems should work, is you get this neat, you know, shell of a thing up front, and you slowly fill it with energy or power or whatever it is you're doing over a period of time, and it gets better and better and better and better, because that gives you the carrot on a stick, right? You're like, oh, hey, you gave me the stick with the carrot on it. Now I get to go and chase the carrot. But as opposed to it being a situation where it's like, I'm just waiting to get the freaking stick, man. Just give me the stick. At some point, I'll be good, and then I can start on the thing that goes towards the carrot. Like, it's just like, just give them that up front, right? Give it to them up front.
Yeah. I mean, you know, WoW obviously is a game of carrots and sticks, but it's one thing when you can't even get the damn stick.
Exactly.
So,
that's what I'm saying.
Like, that's a good way to put it. I don't know. I'm glad they changed this, and I hope that we don't see a legendary distribution system like this again. Like, I mean, I would say that Nazro and Firaloth were pretty much the same thing. So this is sort of the philosophy they've had in Dragonflight. I don't think it's been successful. It certainly hasn't been good for my team's morale. Like, people aren't happy about it. You know, it hasn't made people feel cool and powerful. It's just made them feel like they have this obligation that they can't even fulfill.
Right.
I don't think it's the way to go. So thanks for the buff, and please reconsider this philosophy for next time.
Exactly. All right. Mythic Tindral adjustments also came in on the 27th. Actually, they're coming in tomorrow. This 27th is going to be tomorrow. And this is one where they said during our next scheduled maintenance, they're going to be making The Tindrill's health reduced by 10% on Mythic, and Fiery Vine's health reduced by 10% on Mythic, just to help some more teams get past Tindrill. I think we are actually at the point now where this raid has been alive on Mythic too long for too many teams. I think we're actually hitting that point where things should be shifting into farm, because I think there's only a couple of months left before we move into Season 4. I don't think we're too far out, so I think teams need to start farming so that they can actually enjoy and relax and have a fun time versus the prog that's happening. So I'm hoping this helps teams out a lot more.
I mean, it sounds like Tindrill's been a real brick wall. Just looking at WoW Progress, WoW Progress still has sub 1,000 kills logged on it.
Yeah.
And the raid's been out since November. Just as a comparison, now, granted, numbers are a bit skewed for Abras at this point because it's deprecated, but there have been 2,000 Echo kills. I don't know how many Echo kills there were at the time Yggdrasil came out, but probably most of those were before that. So, you're lagging kind of behind. Obviously, participation kind of ebbs and flows over the course of an expansion and everything, too. But yeah, I think, when you look at the numbers, Tindrill and Farok kills are still too low for a 3-month-plus old raid. And I think these fights are a victim or a symptom. I don't know how to describe it really, but this is part of the race, man. They make these fights and they make the last couple fights mega hard to make the race interesting, and then only the best of the best can kill it. And, I don't know. Is it worth having a boss is it worth making a mode of a boss that after 3.5 months, fewer than 500 or 1,000 teams have killed? I mean, that's up for them to decide, but
that's certainly a large part of it. I think the other part for me is how much time is there between when a team clears a raid and when the next raid comes out, because that window of time is really important, for mental health of that team. Teams that are raiding Mythic need a farm period. They need it, because if you don't get it, you're essentially going from prog to prog to prog to prog, and you just burn people out and burn people out and burn people out, and you just keep cycling people, and it gets worse and worse and worse, and the team dies. That's what kills teams. So you need to make content difficult enough that people enjoy doing it, but also easy enough to clear within a 2-month, 3-month period of time that they then have 2 to 3 months of just relaxing on that raid and having a good time with your buddies in an evening, going out and clearing this raid regularly. Because if you don't have that relief time, if you will, and you're just what are we doing this week? Well, poll number 369 on Jailer, and I think we probably have another 150 left to go before we kill this boss. That is not an enjoyable experience for a player. And if you go from doing 500 polls on a boss to starting a new prog tier, which means you're going right back into now another 60 to 80 polls on a boss, that isn't fun for players, and it burns people out. So you have to be careful when you're starting to look at this and be maybe there's only 1,200 teams that are doing Mythic and 900 of them have killed it. Cool, that's a good percentage. But if the next raid comes out in a month's time or 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever it is, and there's still 300 teams that are progressing on this boss, and they just kill it the week before the next thing comes out, those teams will most likely not have a very good experience going forward, right? Or they might lose people. People might be that's it, I'm done. That might be what happens if you don't allow players to clear the content fast enough to be able to get a break. So you have to build that in when you're choosing these difficulties. And I'm with you that I do feel this content just needs to be easier content that's cleared faster, because your team's raiding one night a week at the moment, right? They're raiding one night a week because people just aren't interested in putting more effort into the game at the moment than that. These teams that are doing Mythic are still going probably 2 to 3 nights a week, doing the same boss every single week for the past probably 3 or 4 weeks in some cases for these teams, struggling to kill that boss. And you're those teams are going to lose people. They are going to, period. There's no chance of them not. So just, keep in mind, as devs, if you want to keep players on the hook and keep players wanting to play, they have to get to the carrot at some point when it comes to these bosses.
Right, yeah. See, yeah, it's the same thing as Fairlife. The itemization thing is the same as the raid prog and raid farm. I mean, I don't know. I think on the bright side, I think Yggdrasil is a really fun raid, and it's well laid out, and it's been a pleasant experience. But I do I think they were too slow to flip the switch on Cross Realm Mythic. I think they've been too slow, resultingly, to bring these nerfs in, especially for the final bosses. I mean, really for for a lot of your like really high end Mythic teams, most of these raids are really like 2 boss instances, right, or maybe 3. And it's the average players start getting pinched a lot earlier. So why not just bring it down a bit? I don't know. I thought we'd see bigger nerfs across the board after Cross Realm opened up.
Yeah.
And we kind of have it. I mean, we saw some big Farok nerfs, and we're definitely seeing some more big Tindral nerfs as well. Obviously, in War Within, we're not going to have. I'd imagine we're not going to have the Cross Realm rating restriction, so that might help a bit. Since we're going to like everything that can be Cross Realm is Cross Realm all the time. So that could be a plus, and Season 4 is not going to have any kind of prestige around Hall of Fame or anything like that. So that might help a bit. It's going to be a more probably relaxed rating environment in general. But yeah, like you really don't want people progging right up until the new season comes out. And I mean, Season 4 is probably going to be what, May? I would think May, with like maybe a 10-2-7 and something like that. So, we got to give people a little bit of time if they're still pushing hard. Like you said, they need time to wind down, farm, enjoy it, maybe just step away for a little bit and not be expected to be chained to that desk for another 200 pulls or whatever. So I don't know. I'm just surprised we haven't seen more of this so far. I thought that they were really gonna chunk these bosses down once Hall of Fame filled up.
Yeah, I hope they do. I hope that we see more nerfs come in and more teams able to knock them out and more people having fun with the content, because I mean, we are in a lull and you're not going to keep people hooked if you are putting out bosses that essentially are burning people out. So you gotta get the nerfs in and give people a time to be able to relax and enjoy and have some fun with the tail end of the expansion. Because I mean, even as you said, like one of the things that could be considered a nerf is fixing the legendary so that its ability actually works properly. However, that only works if the people who have actually gotten a legendary and had that chance to do it are still playing the game. And a lot of those people probably aren't in this situation. Like there's probably a lot of people who got them early on, felt done, raided for another 8 weeks after that, and then we're like, all right, I'm good. Like I'm taking a break. I'm getting my break in while I can. So yeah, it's a tricky thing to go over with that. So hopefully more nerfs, more buffs to classes come in and sort of clear up this raid and get some more people into that farm mode so they can be ready for Season 4 when it comes out, because guess what? It's going to be content they've done before, but with a twist. So it needs to actually be fun for folks to dive into it. Okay. WoW Hardcore Self-Found Mode is kicking off on the 29th. It's going to be going live at 3 p.m. Pacific, that's 6 p.m. Eastern on the 29th. And what this is WoW Hardcore, which is, hey, if you die, you die. Your character is dead. However, if your character dies, it goes into a classic realm as a like normal classic character. In a lot of cases, you can choose to export a character to do that, so you're not actually losing your character entirely. You just are no longer a hardcore character. Self-found means that you essentially, any item that you get, you are unable to trade, you are unable to auction house, you are unable to send via the mail. So if you actually get this, then it means that if you actually get an item, then it means that you now have that item and you can't give it to your buddy. So when Shaman loot drops off of Onyxia and you are playing Alliance, and you are playing Horde and you loot the Shaman loot, you can't give it to your Shaman buddy. Like it's now stuck on you. So I'm curious as to how rating is going to work for all of this, but I'm assuming it will be loot distribution based off of Master Looter inside of raid situations. Dungeon loot, though, I don't know. Like, I'm curious as to how this is going to work. So let's read what they threw in the post here. All right, players can choose to take on this new mode of play at level 1 by selecting the option at character creation screen. While in this mode, players will be restricted from sending or receiving mail from other players, buying or selling on the auction house, or trading in any way, including giving or receiving items and enchantments. So it means you can't, if you're not an enchanter, you will not have enchants. Keep that in mind. While self-found mode is activated, you'll see a new buff applied to your character. Characters with self-found mode on will also have a small icon in the character selection screen. So just be aware of that, so it's really clear when you're actually picking your character later on which one is in self-found mode. Turn off this mode of play. Sorry, to turn off this mode of play, Alliance players can visit Apprentice Watcher in the Ironforge, Hall of Explorers, or the Moon Temple in Darnassus. And Horde players can visit the Apprentice Watchers in the Orgrimmar PvP vendors area, or Undercity in the Apothecarium, to allow yourself to actually talk to someone and turn this off. It'll be all up to you and your ability to gather and create everything you need to survive in Azeroth on your own. Yeah, so they don't mention at all anything about dungeons or raids. So my assumption is basically it's going to be like a need before greed situation where you essentially have a pop-up window and you're going to need on items you need when you actually kill a boss. And if you get it, then it's yours and you can't trade it. And it's, it is what it is. So if a recipe drops for alchemy, and it pops up as a roll for everybody, and you're not an alchemist, and there's an alchemist in your group, and you roll on it and you take it, you had better be planning to become an alchemist, because otherwise it's just vendor trash, because you can't sell it anywhere, you can't trade it to anyone, it is permanently in your inventory, or until you vendor it or you destroy it. So just keep that in mind. I do think this mode's going to be a little spicy for professions, because I do think there's going to be people who level up tailoring or leatherworking or blacksmithing, make the gear they want to make, ditch their profession, level up enchanting so they can enchant the gear that they want to enchant. I think you'll see a lot of those crafting professions doing that, which means that you're going to have this really interesting cycle of materials that people need to gather to be able to do that, but you have to do it all on your own. You can't just go to the auction house and say, hey, I want to buy 300 vision dust so that I can level up my enchanting easily. You have to go out and find greens and blues and disenchant them to get the materials you need to be able to level these professions. So it is going to be a grind. So all the people out there who really like grinding, this is the thing that you're going to be wanting to do, is this play mode for sure. If you die and you're out of the hardcore mode of this hardcore self-found stuff, you have to start over and grind that character back up again. So this is danger zone at the same time as heavy grinding. So I think there's going to be some player base that really fall into this. I'm not one of them. It's not how I like to play World of Warcraft. I like to play with other people, share things, and group up and feel like we're all succeeding together. This isn't my thing, but for some players it is. So here you go, guys. For all those self-founder hardcores out there, this is your jam.
Yeah, this is real niche, but that's cool though. I mean, I'm glad they're putting it in. I'm not going to play this at all. I have no interest in this, but it is a cool option. And what was smart is they were able to just do it with a buff.
Yeah,
right. They don't need to have a whole separate environment for it. Why not? Why not throw it in there, make it an option if that's what people want to try to do. I think it's a cool addition to the subscription and to Classic as a product, but I have zero interest in playing this, man. It doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me at all. But for those people who just want to really dive in and grind it up, I mean, this is perfect for that audience, and it's not that much of a lift, So, the realms exist. Make a new character, turn on the buff, play the game, and then if you really get sick of it, or I don't know, maybe you're playing with your buddies and you want to get to end game or something, and then you want to be able to trade stuff, and you can turn it off. The tune isn't just stranded at that point. So that's a nice option too. I think that the implementation is pretty elegant.
What I love about this implementation is the buff that you're talking about, because it means if I want to play World of Warcraft with my friend, but I don't want to do hardcore self-found mode, but I want to do hardcore mode, I can make this is the way it sounds to me, all right? I obviously will confirm all this on the 29th, but I can make a character on a hardcore server, not check the self-found box, and my friend can make a character on the hardcore server and check the self-found box, and we can still group up and do stuff. It just means they're not able to trade loot to me, and I'm not able to trade loot to them. But we can still do stuff together even though I'm not playing self-found and they are, and it also means the entire world is more populated that those people exist in. So it's not like they're like, yep, here's the hardcore self-found server. Everyone on the server is hardcore self-found. It means you're still on a server with a lot of other people that's very populated as far as, all other hardcore players. You just happen to have this buff that stops you from doing those things. I think that's kind of a neat concept. If that's in fact what we're going to be seeing that goes live, which it sounds like it is, that's going to be pretty cool. So yeah, I guess I'm looking forward to seeing what people think about it, and I like the implementation. I think it's very elegant in what they're doing, like you said.
Yeah, if they had to make new realms for this, dude, I think forget it. I don't think you have enough people to be interested in this enough to make a realm be like viable. Plus, it's costs they got to incur to run it, which means there's like a timer on how much they're going to do it, right?
Yeah.
So I think doing it this way is really smart. It's just not that much of a lift for them compared to some other ways they could have done it. So yeah, if you want to check it out, it's I guess it's U.S. It's like Thursday afternoon this week, and yeah, it'll just be an option when you make a new classic hardcore character.
Yeah. All right. With that, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us improve on the content that we create. I'm going to give a shout out here to Alianas, Arajian, Celian, James, Kapawi, Max, Skazgrin, Shorel, and Rager. Thank you so much for all that you give, as well as all of our patrons. We appreciate all of you. You help keep the show on the rails and running, and all paying all the bills that go associated with hosting sites and hosting large audio files and making sure that we can put this podcast into your ear holes so that you can actually listen to all of the things. And we're going to keep doing it. And like I said, there's going to be a few episodes that are a little bit shorter during this lull, even though this is probably still going to be like an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and 20 minutes long, which I think is like ideal in a lot of cases. I'm sorry, those of you who love our 2.5 hour episodes. They are hard to produce, but they are also things that, we obviously feel we need to do every now and then just to cover all the content. But yeah, our patrons help make the show possible. If you want to become a patron and support the show, we appreciate you. You just need to head on over to patreon.com/thestartingzone, and you can, sign up at the tier that works for you. Everyone who signs up at, the second tier or higher can actually get in there and see our patron-only channel inside of our Discord. And that's where like show notes get posted before the show goes live, and there's some conversation that happens there as well about the show and about different things in World of Warcraft. So if you want access to that channel, it's just that slightly higher tier. And thank you again to all of our patrons. We appreciate it, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you, patrons. We appreciate all your support, past and present. It really does make a huge difference in keeping the show on track and getting episodes out and keeping them hosted. So thank you all so much for making it happen. And yeah, we really appreciate it, and it's been going a really long time. Some of you have stuck with us for a really long time, and it's amazing. So thank you all.
Thank you. All right, if you folks have enjoyed this episode, there's another way to support us. You can head on over to your iTunes or Apple Podcasts and leave us those 5-star reviews. We love getting reviews from our listeners, and we love reading them here live. And this one comes in from Cody, entitled "Really Well Done." Really informative and easy to follow for a wide range of WoW players. There's no drama or wild Blizzard conspiracy theories. It's just a show for people who enjoy the game by people who enjoy the game and know how to explain it. Thank you. Well, I'm glad, Cody, that you enjoy the show. And yes, you are helping raise us up those charts and help more people find our podcast and more people dive in and get all that information that they need to get. So thank you for leaving us the 5-star. They truly help us out. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Cody. Appreciate you taking the time. Glad you're enjoying the show. Although, you do give me an idea for maybe a new format regarding drama and wild Blizzard conspiracy theories. That, you never know.
They'd be like
branch out a little.
They'd be like shorts. They'd be like 10-minute gripes. Yeah. That's what we would do. Oh my god.
We'll do it. We'll do it vertically. Make it TikTokable.
It's the angry zone, not the starting zone.
Yeah. There you go. We got to get the word angry in there, so we get that engagement.
Exactly.
But no, yeah, I'm sincerely glad you enjoyed the show, and thank you so much for taking the time to write up a review. We appreciate it. It does help with discoverability and to have new people join our community and listen to the show and hop in and chat with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. That wraps up episode 620 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to The Starting Zone podcast. The official website is thestartingzone.com, and you can, have a look at show notes there. It's links to all the stuff that you might have heard about in the episode that you're curious about. It's like a time capsule, which is what I dig. If I want to go back and look at a Blizzard post from 8 years ago about a patch, I can do that by just going to our show notes, which I think is really cool. So yes, definitely check those out. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter at thestartingzone, or like I said, join our Discord server over at thestartingzone.com/discord. You can ask things in there. You'll get answers from knowledgeable folks around the community, as well as Jason and myself, which I think is super helpful. I always love when I see someone in the community ask a question and someone else in the community answers it before I can even get to it. That makes me super happy. People are very helpful.
Especially when it's like better than whatever I was going to type.
Well, there you go.
When it's like, oh yeah, this is the first thing that popped into my head. Oh, this is way better. Okay, I'm glad somebody else said that. Okay, great.
If you want to get your hands on some TSE gear, you can find that over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/thestartingzone. And you can get shirts and mugs and stickers and that kind of stuff. And if you're trying to find Jason, you can find him on the internets where?
Best place to find me is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. You can also find me on Blue Sky. Blue Sky is now open to the public. It's no longer invite only. So you can find me over there. My handle there is just Jay Lucas, so you can search me up. I'm not really posting anything over there. I'm not even tweeting that much really, but I do hang out over there. So, you can find me if you want to drop a line. You can also check out my video channels at twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. I haven't been streaming in a few weeks here. I do want to get back to it, but I'm just not in a place where I can do that. And also my WoW schedule has been real light, so that's sort of another factor. Plus my ongoing and forever internet issues when I start pushing, upload. So, but check out the channels. They're not dead forever. I'm in a little bit of a window here where I just can't really do it. But check them out anyway. We'll be back soon.
Fair enough. All right, if you're trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey. I'm also over on Blue Sky at Spencer HD. I know a few people followed me over there recently, which I thought was great. Starting to see that social network pick up a little bit more, which is good because, Twitter is a mess, man. When I get individual DMs from Elon pushed to my phone, I'm very disappointed at platform for allowing people to do that.
The reply thread on any tweet is just like a mess of bots and nonsense. Blue Sky just doesn't have the volume yet, but it's an interesting platform. If you like old school Twitter, it's a lot like it.
Exactly.
It's just, we don't have quite the critical mass of users and sort of the conversations that we're used to over on Twitter over there yet. But, it's starting to pick up.
It is. Twitch.tv/SpencerHD, as well as YouTube.com/@SpencerHD if you're looking for channel stuff for me. And with that, for Jason and myself, I want to say thanks for listening and jobs done.